Good evening, everyone. This is Jean-Paul Spagnolo, and this evening I have the opportunity to discuss Chapter 15 of our leadership text. It's entitled Heroic Leadership's Greatest Battle, and the author of this particular chapter is Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. One of the things I love about this chapter is I think it's very relatable to all of us. Most of us have experienced success in life as leaders, and I'm sure that we've all also felt those moments of despair and disappointment when we've had failure as leaders as well. And so to discuss this chapter, we have to recognize that leaders are subject to changing environments. There is no cruise control for leaders to coast on the momentum of recent triumphs. Today's evidence of good fortune could evaporate with tomorrow's events. As we move in a very fast-paced world that we live in today, leaders oftentimes find themselves subject to the changing environments around them. They might have been on top of the world one day, and the next day find themselves picking themselves right up off the ground. And so when we start thinking about what it is to be a great leader or a test of leadership, there is this element that is centered on the idea of resilience in challenging moments. And that's much of what this chapter is focused on. What is it that leaders do when they find themselves in challenging moments, when they feel defeat or disappointment, and what they do to overcome those moments of despair, defeat, or disappointment and turn those moments into success. So to discuss this particular chapter, I thought it would be good to use some historical examples that all of us could probably relate to and recognize some of the characteristics that each of them share. These folks are folks that we've probably heard in other leadership courses or have learned a little bit about in school at one point in time or another, and we've learned about their successes, and we've also heard about their failures. And so we have Mozart, Virginia Woolf, Sigmund Freud, Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr. listed here. And some of the things that they all shared in common is that they were all very extremely self-aware. They knew about their surroundings. They knew about how they fit within their surroundings. They knew about their strengths and their limitations. And they were able to make sure that they worked through both their strengths and were able to make their limitations irrelevant. They had a very keen situation analysis. They were able to know what was going on around them, and they were able to adapt as a result of that. And one of the last things that I think is very vital to the understanding about why they are such great examples of leaders who are resilient is that they had the capacity to reframe setbacks into future successes. Martin Luther King Jr., I'll take a moment and discuss him, I think, because some of the successes that he created, I think he created in moments that many people would have considered to be very despair-oriented or being moments where they could have turned themselves away from their cause. It's not uncommon when you look into the history of Martin Luther King Jr. to come across stories about him being thrown into jail as a result of just doing things within his rights to make sure and push for civil rights and for awareness of what we needed to do to become a better society, caring for each and every one of each other. And whenever he had those moments, whether he was placed into jail, whether he received threats from other individuals, he took the opportunity to turn those moments into success. He didn't get stuck in despair. Instead, he used them to really gain even additional followers and to turn those moments into opportunities to really focus on what his cause was and was able to do a great job of doing that. So when we start to see this idea of leadership greatness, we know that great leaders recognize that resilience to adversity is really a pathway to success, and that if they are focused, they can turn their losses and make them reconstructed into assets. And they also recognize, again, that the sagas of redemption inspire others to join worthy causes, much like the example I shared with Martin Luther King Jr. Great leaders gain confidence for transformational leadership through the transcendence over life's adversity. These are individuals who recognize that when they've had adversity, it's going to give them new knowledge, and it's knowledge that they can use to become even better at what they care about, what they do, and to be even more transformational in the relationships of those they work with and lead. So two examples that our author of this chapter present are Bernstein and Bennis. Bernstein, it was a musician. His name was Leonard. And then, of course, Bennis is the Warren Bennis that we've been discussing throughout all the chapters in this particular text. And in their lives, they both had examples of both career resilience and a continuous creative contribution to the fields that they worked in. So some of the things that they shared in common are that they both felt a call to greatness early in life. They knew that they wanted to do something in life that would be profound, and they found that call in things related to what their careers eventually became. They also had early trials in their lives, and one of the things that they did to overcome those is they found mentors. And the author uses the word Jedi mentoring because the mentors that they found were those type of individuals who truly invested in them and were very successful in their own right. And these particular leaders in Bernstein and Bennis, they were able to get that mentoring from people that had gone before them and done a great job and had much success and could really relate to these two individuals. They also went about their careers educating and promoting others. So once they had been mentored, they became mentors. They wanted to make sure that they brought other people along. They were promoting them and helping them grow. And growth was a very big, important part of both of their careers. Another thing they both did is they crossed boundaries. And so in doing that, they were able to further their knowledge and expand their awareness and knowledge of different elements of their particular careers. And they were able to become even more creative in the solutions that they were trying to find. Bernstein, for example, is probably most famous for being the conductor of the New York Symphony, but beyond that, he was also known for being the person who wrote the score behind West Side Story, and yet, even though he wrote that score, he wrote many other scores before, some that were poorly received, others that were well received, and he wrote many scores afterwards, again, many that were poorly received and many that were well received. And each of those moments he learned from him, and those are things that he took from his knowledge and growing across boundaries into other parts of his profession. And so whether it was the symphony or working with Broadway scores, he also did work on different movies in Hollywood. He found himself learning from each of those moments in both the times that he had success and in the times he had failure. Warren Bennis, again, just like Bernstein, did cross boundaries. He was an academic dean, president of a university. In addition to that, he was a CEO. He's been an author and a leader, a brilliant mind on leadership. And as he went through all those different processes, he also had many ups and downs. The author points out one particular story with Bennis. In his earlier part of his career, he took an opportunity to become the provost of Buffalo University, which is a part of the CUNY system. And he and this president that he was working with had this great desire to change the entire culture and environment there. And they found so much resistance that eventually both of them left without ever implementing the intentions and the culture that they desired to create. And yet, when that happened, Bennis took that moment in time and really wanted to make sure that he used it to expand his knowledge about how to be a good leader. And he talks about it even as a place where he reframed some of the paradigms of leadership that he thought he held true to just be shifted at least, and recognize that there was some room for at least growth and change in the way that he viewed certain elements of leadership. So, as you can tell by much of what I've just discussed, both of them had their share of setbacks in life, and both of them had their share of successes. And these are some of the things that they both went through and recognized throughout the process of working with others. So they realized that when it becomes a place of resilience, that resilience is also something that isn't done just by oneself, but it is also through the rededication and support of others around them. Great leaders know that they are to fight, not flight. They acknowledge and redirect stress when they feel helpless, and they know that they're dealing with certain demands that are making them feel that way. They focus not just on what's making them feel helpless, but figuring out ways to regain control. They can do this by making commitments or responding to different challenges in different ways, and sometimes that might even mean taking a radical approach. And of course, they also have to be a little bit blind to their fears so that they don't become self-fulfilling prophecies of failure. And so that's one of the things, or several of the things, that leaders do in order to make sure that they redirect stress and then can therefore be resilient and overcome the setbacks that they're feeling. They also make sure and recruit others into battle, and they have concern for the collateral victims. They show appreciation to those individuals who were with them during their successes, and also the fact that they recognize that some of those same people were also affected when failures happened. And so they make sure and take and show appreciation to them. They also make sure and try to replenish the resources both for themselves and others around them in order to overcome some of the challenges or adversity they've faced. And another thing that they do, of course, in this regard is they surround themselves with trusted advisors, people that can give them very candid feedback. And when they do this, they have an opportunity to learn and grow as a result of those relationships of people who can tell them and put them in their place when they need to, but also tell them and reinforce the things that they're doing well. Another thing that great leaders do is they rebuild heroic stature and they spread the true nature of diversity. They recognize that great leaders themselves have a heroic persona, and oftentimes in the world around them they are seen as larger-than-life presence. And so when tragedy happens, they take the time to rebuild those images and internally fill those images so that they can externally work with the world in a manner that a leader is asked to do so. They prove their mettle, and they regain trust and credibility. Leaders, like artists, need audiences, and when they have had failures, sometimes those audiences are a little bit more challenging to gather, but they don't stop. They make sure and continue to do the right things by regaining trust and credibility and focusing on things that they can do well to be able to get those audiences back. Donald Trump is probably a great example of this. As many of you know, he started off as a young entrepreneur, showed a lot of promise, and had found some major success and established himself as a prominent real estate agent in New York City. And then eventually he fell upon some tough times and was seen himself in the red. And that wasn't something that stopped him. Instead, he took those moments and reframed, learned from those experiences, and was able to rebuild on his successes by focusing on some specific strategies to build the success up again. And to this day, you see his name just about everywhere when it comes to some of the real estate markets around the world. And he's obviously been able to rebuild his credibility in that realm, as well as reestablishing trust with certain individuals and expanding his leadership into other places too. So whether or not you think Trump's a great leader, there is some truth probably in understanding that when he had a moment of failure, he was able to be resilient and build trust again and credibility back into a place where he was able to promote success. The last thing that we talk about in this rededication of support of others is rediscovering the heroic mission, clearing the past, and charting the future. And great leaders recognize that this might mean that they have to require new learning skills, that they have to gain skills that they might have lacked in the past. Steve Jobs himself is probably one of the greatest examples of this. When he left Apple the first time or was forced out a little bit, he retooled some of his management approaches and didn't change his creativity or who he was as an individual, but he gained some extra skills. So when he came back to Apple, he was able to do and transform Apple from where it was at to the Apple that we know today. He really lived by the idea that what doesn't destroy him made him stronger. And so that's something that great leaders recognize and understand. So when bad things happen to good leaders, there are several things that you can think about that can help you to reframe and what good leaders do in those moments. One is that they recognize that much of life is out of their control. And so because of that, they anticipate there's going to be adversity at times. And in that anticipation, they're able to be more resilient and to react to the moments of failure in a quicker, more positive way, and to make those moments of adversity opportunities for success. The nature of setbacks will never be convenient, and they know that, and so again, they don't lament on their failures, but they find moments to turn those failures into successes. And then the next one is that they take the occasions of distress as potential clouds with silver linings, and they turn things that are bad into positive moments and opportunities. And the last thing is that through loss we discover what we really value, who we can trust, and reveal new dimensions of our character. And great leaders recognize this as well. So again, the main theme of this particular chapter is that there is resiliency that is an important part of leadership, and that all leaders are going to have moments of failure, but if they respond to those in positive ways, they will have even greater outcomes. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. I'll be posting a couple questions in Blackboard for us to follow up on, and I will hopefully have some great dialogue with you very soon. Thank you.